Harris also held a rally where supporters demanded peace in Gaza. She assured her supporters that a deal will be finalized soon on ceasefire in Gaza, Israel war and release of the hostages.
Let me just say something. Hold up for a second. Hold up for a second. Let me just say something. Let me just say something. We are fighting for a democracy. Everyone has a right and should have their voices heard. I am speaking now, but on the subject, I will say this. The President and I are working around the clock. We've got to get a hostage deal done and get a ceasefire done now.
All right, let's go across to Washington, D.C. Lead India's Benji Hire is joining us live from there. Benji, both the candidates have been holding rallies. I mean, if you talk about Kamala Harris and also Donald Trump, but let's talk about the CNN interview. Tell us, what were the major points, highlights of the interview? Kamala Harris hitting back at Trump in first major interview?
Yeah, I mean, this was a moment for her to set her position to the American people, her first sit-down on the record conversation since she took the nomination following President Joe Biden's decision to stand down. And she largely used this opportunity, it's still ongoing, to defend her record and her plans for if she wins the White House. She was pressed on issues, as you might predict, like the economy, like immigration, which was a real sticking point for her during a previous interview years ago, where she gave an answer which gave the perception to the American people that she wasn't a very strong interviewee. Excuse me. Forgive me. She was then also pressed on an issue which is mainly domestic in scope, but still speaks to America's place on the world in terms of energy and climate change. The topic of fracking, the natural gas practice of obtaining fossil fuel that is so essential towards some of the key states that she'd need to win, like Pennsylvania. Now, this was important because years ago, she said she's committed to putting an end to fracking once and for all. Now she says that she wouldn't ban it, and that has been an attack line from Donald Trump of late, calling her a, quote, chameleon for what he sees as her shifting policy positions. In this interview, she says that her values have not changed in regard to fracking, nor immigration, where she said she will continue to enforce laws at the southern border. Some interesting points also to take away from this interview. She says that she would appoint, or happily appoint, a Republican to her own cabinet, presumably not one supportive of Donald Trump. She, in relation to Donald Trump's racially motivated attacks on her, called his remarks the same old tired playbook. She was asked about foreign policy. She says Israel has a right to defend itself, but how it does so matters. Too many lives, she says, have been lost in Gaza in the war since, and that she endorses a ceasefire deal. And most recently, she shared her views on the private moment in which Joe Biden announced to her that he would be removing himself from the race, that he'd be endorsing his vice president. And she drew a contrast between what she views as Biden's character, his selflessness, his patriotism in taking that decision for the benefit of the country, in relation to what she sees as Donald Trump's disposition. She claims that history will view Biden's administration as transformative, but now, she says, is a chance to pave a new way forward.
Benji, also, I mean, I know it's still going on, but did she also talk about what major challenges is she going to face if she rises to the top job?
Look, I think number one is the economy, and that's how the interview opened. She was asked what she would do on day one of taking office in the White House. Her answer was broad in scope. I mean, a number of her sort of policy positions, and this has been a criticism of the vice president, have been quite broad. She says that she would just implement the opportunity economy, as she calls it, ultimately making sure that the economy works for middle and working class Americans. Now, the question could, of course, be posed to Kamala Harris, well, why wasn't that work done under this previous administration, under Biden's White House, under which she served? Well, in response to that, she says that, first of all, the White House under Joe Biden had to fix the economic mess out of the pandemic, which she blames partly on Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump. And she points to her record and says, well, look, we've managed to get inflation down. We've managed to bring in a number of policies to help the American people, and that she would continue that in tow if she were to win in November.
She must have spoken about the Medicare also. But yes, thank you for the time being, Benji. But yes, we'll keep coming back to you.